Today we have Mary Beth Bennett, one of our top producing agents, to talk to us about Remine.
And we don't have to have this like up totally. I just put it there, just kind of give it everyone an outline of what we would be going over so we weren't just going blind into this.
So Mary Beth is going to share with us today all about how to work Remine. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm going to do an overview, but also when I saw a lot of people that were coming, I know some of you had come to presentations I've had in the past. So I wanted to leave some time that we could go over scenarios and, if you had certain neighborhoods you wanted to talk about on how to use it. I know I've told you before that each neighborhood is different in how you use it. We'll get to that at the end though. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. Is there a way that we can, like that I can make this larger so I can see all who's here, like without, can we make the presentation thing smaller and the boxes thing larger?
Well, we can take the screen down and then everybody.
Yeah, you can take the screen down. You can take the screen down. It's fine. We can email it to me. It's not that major of a situation.
Okay.
Oh, that's better. Okay.
Now everybody's here.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing?
Good morning. Hey, Mary Beth.
So I know some of you have come to the Remine presentation before. Have any of you used it since we've met previously?
I'm sure some of you have used it. Now, come
a
on.
little.
Yes, I did.
Did you have any luck?
I mean,
like in figuring it out, it's
yes.
It's data aggregate software. So essentially, it's like the tax records on steroids.
Yeah, all it made me want to do is buy it. That's all it made me. When I used it, I want more.
Yeah. So I have had the pro version for so long, I can't tell you what is in each program. But when you first sign into it for do the free 15-minute tutorial, it will show you what's in each plan, and you have to figure out if you're going to use it, if you're not going to use it. It pays for itself within one transaction. So I think if you are a person that would work it, then it's worthwhile. Essentially, it's a data aggregate software. It's pulling from all different things. It's pulling from the mortgage records. It's pulling from the tax records. It's pulling in contact information, if there are liens on the property, last time it sold, picture of the home, and also
Airbnb.
We have this proprietary algorithm, which they won't explain as to what they're pulling from, but I will tell you that it is the number of properties that show up as high, medium, and high on the sell score drops all the time. So they're just narrowing down what those factors are. I know that there have been times when I have Googled the people or tried to figure out what landed them on the high sell score. Let's say one time it was a guy, I think I've told some of you, there was a guy in Ion that was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, and
I remember that.
Remine told me he was likely to sell because they knew that something had happened to him. So it's kind of all over the place.
So Mary Beth, I have a question. How accurate have you found this data to be in regards to how it helps you?
So I have found it to be very accurate. And so we'll start like ways to use it, right? There are so many ways to use it. I can use it before I go to a listing presentation, I'll look up properties. Before I submit an offer on something, I'll look up a property. It just gives me more information. I feel like the more you know about a house, the more detailed your message can be to the person. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. I'm all about the data. I love being able to share that at a listing presentation, but I typically
I really would not share it because then they kind of come off that you're a little stalkerish, like, oh, I know that you owe this much and this is what your mortgage payment is, and you don't want to tell them that.
No, I usually use data that I pull from MLS, in regards to sales and neighborhoods and, those types of things, not the personal data. I do find that to be a little creepy as well. So
yeah, I just don't mention it to them, but it's pretty accurate for the most part. The only time, like, let's say the mortgage data for instance, the time that the instances where it's not accurate is when it's somebody that has a reverse mortgage. It can't predict that. Mm-hmm. But that is not the majority of the properties.
Right.
I have had an instance where I had showed a property, and let's say it was in Cane Bay, and it was listed for $400, and my client wanted to offer $380, but when I looked in Remine, basically it showed me he was at the lowest he could go without bringing money to the table. And when I called the other agent and asked him, he had no idea. And I said, well, it looks to me like your client owes XYZ. Is this the lowest you can go without bringing money? And he didn't know, and called me back and said yes. So I think in that scenario, it's just really interesting. Or let's say you have a seller and their property is sitting on the market. You know what their payment is each month based on this data, and you can kind of tailor that message. We can wait another 6 months, but you're paying $2,500, $2,500 a month, and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I definitely agree that it gives you talking points, and I think you have to walk that fine line as to what you share in regards to not really putting yourself all the way out there, because you do come across a little creepy at that point in time. Mm-hmm.
But I've also had, I could go to a listing presentation and I know what they owe, and I'll ask them, when we're coming up with the seller net sheet, we're discussing it. I'll say, well, what do you owe on this property? And they say, I'm not really sure. I'll have to pull my information. I'll be like, does such and such sound correct? And they're like, yes. And then, like, when you say that to them, they then think that you are so prepared that they're not creeped out.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's not something like I would do regularly, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, there are many uses for it. We glanced over the idea of using it in a listing presentation, because the talking points, more data than you would based on the tax records or previous listings. You can use it when submitting an offer for a property. I think the best way to use it, however, is for prospecting and predicting who is going to sell, why they're going to sell, and what the message is to them. Because once you can figure that out, you're no longer going for what I like to call this gunshot blast approach. I think that most people, when they're prospecting, that's what they're doing. It's sending out blanket statements to everyone and anyone, and not drilling down to the people that would sell. Obviously, like, it takes a little more time, but you have a targeted message instead of sending the gunshot blast approach to 500 people, and it's just so vague of a message. You take that extra time, drill down to who is actually more likely to sell, and give them a tailored message that they appreciate, and then they think, wow, she's so on top of what's happening here. Mm-hmm. Is that what everyone's kind of done with it in the past, for those of you that have signed in?
I've never done it before. This is my first hearing about it. So
okay, so It's if you go to MLS, the drop-down menu situation, you can sign in there. I would say your first step, Jean, is they offer a 15-minute tutorial. And what I say all the time is, this isn't for everyone, right? I do love research, and I've gotten listings from this. I've found properties for my investors from this. I think it's a great tool to use while prospecting. I know that there are people, I want to say that I remember there are some people in maybe Trolley Road office or something that use Remine when deciding who to send out the postcards to. Instead of sending it to the 75 surrounding properties, they will pull the medium to high sell score properties in that general vicinity and send to them. So you can do that. And like, those are just in the end, I'll talk about where you can find videos on how other people have used it, but there's a million ways to use it. You just have to figure out what is something that you would be willing to do. And if you're not into writing the handwritten notes or whatever, then it's not worth it for you.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Any questions?
Mary Beth, exactly. You said use it for prospecting. Exactly. For those people that are new, how would you go about using it?
So that we're going to go talk about that and go into some examples. Like, the targeted prospecting is really the way to do it. And I would love it if, you could give me examples of neighborhoods that you are looking at, and we can talk about each neighborhood differently. So for instance, everyone knows, most people know that I work a lot in my neighborhood, and I talk about how neighborhoods similar to Snee Farm that were built in, mid to late 70s, early 80s it's easier to predict. When you look through the records, you can search for different things. 2-story home, owned it before, since 1995 or before, over 2,800 square feet. The person in those homes is not the original owner. And, that wasn't their first home, right? They bought that home in, 1995. They weren't going into that home at 21 years old. They had been in a previous home. This was their upsize home. Those people are looking to downsize. So that's just that's one way to use it. But every neighborhood is different, and thinking through how it's going to be used. For instance, a neighborhood like Center Lake, totally different neighborhood. And every neighborhood is cyclical in some way. So you just have to think through how long are people staying in homes. And some neighborhoods, it's harder to predict. But let's say Center Lake, for example, if you look at the properties within Center Lake that are selling over the last year and a half, a good portion of them had purchased around the same time. They had purchased 4 years ago. They were just married, no children. Now they've had 1 or 2 children. They need to get a larger home, and they're moving on. They have a lot of equity in that property because those values have gone up considerably. So they're moving on to their next home. Does that make sense? So in that scenario, I'm looking for a different thing than in Snee Farm. Or a neighborhood like, let's say, the smaller homes in Bell Hall, for example, in the front, the people that have owned long-time absentee owners in there that bought them when they were a fraction of the price, at some point, this is a great time to cash out for them and sharing that message. Does anyone have any neighborhoods they'd like to discuss and kind of get ideas on?
I know that I have a client who's looking specifically in Hanahan. So we have some time.
Hanahan is the perfect place to do this. Well, it depends. I mean, Tanner Plantation a little harder, but areas like Otranto, Yeamans Hall, this would be great.
So in working with this particular client, our time frame, we have about a year before she has to be out of her other home. So we have some time for the market to pick back up in that area, because right now Hanahan is slim pickings in her price range.
It's very interesting to me to think through all the time. I'm evaluating who is moving, why are they moving, what is the message you're getting to them, and how do you convince them to sell? I think, what neighborhoods have you been looking at with her?
Near the high school. She needs something around the high school. So
one of the things I've talked about with Andrea recently is my concern that some of people that would have previously been looking to downsize in the older homes, they won't be. Not just downsize, move to independent living or some kind of senior facility. They're not going to do that right now. And I think they're traumatized. Yeah. They'll be staying in their homes. And so that is going to be a shift in way of thinking on who is moving, right? And
that's
it's something I think about in my neighborhood, and like it's going to stall all those people that I previously had anticipated would be going in the next 2 to 3 years. So Hanahan, I would look in Hanahan, I would start with the absentee owners.
Okay, that's a good one.
And figure out what is going on with it. Is it vacant? Is it being rented? If it's being rented, is it being rented for enough money?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And drill down to, some of you have heard the story about the quadplex in West Ashley, where all these quadplexes were owned by absentee owners out of state. And one of them, they'd all owned them since they were built in 1980, 81. And one woman inherited the quadplex. She had never even been to Charleston, had a P.O. box listed for her as the mailing address in Nevada. I Googled her. So even a lot of times I'll Google people and make sure they're even still alive. I would rather do 5 minutes worth of research than continue to send out postcards or handwritten notes to someone that's not alive, so Googled her and gave me her home address, which turned out was on the market. So I reached out to her agent in Nevada and said, I think your client Edith owns a quadplex in Charleston and it's a good time to sell it. So if you get me to Edith and she sells her quadplex, I'll give you a referral fee. He had nothing to lose and she sold the quadplex. So it's just about connecting the dots on what the message is and what you're getting to them. In terms of the absentee owners, some of them have the properties are vacant or they're renting them for far under value and they don't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, ideas of neighborhoods that you're thinking about? Anyone?
And the example that you just gave was like, what made you pick that particular property? Was it that you had an investor who wanted a quadplex, or?
So I saw that the last two over there had sold very quickly, a day or two, multiple offers. None of them are fixed up. I particularly look and do most of my work in the closer in locations. It's harder for me to think through predicting. Cane Bay, for example, it would be more difficult for me. The older areas, I find easier to think through the process of who is moving. And currently, I feel like there are a lot of people, Center Lake, for example, was not a hot place to live years ago, but Brad Middleton had a listing in Center Lake, and I did an open house there, and there were easily 20 couples that young couples that came through just for the location.
Yeah.
So I think those locations are drawing people, and it's a good place to prospect.
Mary Beth, you made a point a minute ago, I think, when Lizzie asked you about the quadruplex, and you were saying that you'd noticed there's other quadruplexes had sold recently. So which means that you were doing other kind of research.
I mean, Andrea and I talk about it all the time. We are stalkers of the MLS. I think the main point is you need to know the inventory, know what's selling, why, how quickly it's selling, what are some characteristics about each neighborhood. I've done that new agent training before and talked about prospecting. And I remember one person, no one on here, but I asked who is looking at the hot sheet every day. And he said, well, I'm not, because I don't have any clients. Well, that's not the way to approach this. The more information you have on what is selling and why it's selling and who is buying and what's moving, what's not moving, makes your job easier.
Yeah, and if you can't keep up with, all the inventory, keep up with what you know and where you're living, where you're working.
Hyper-focus on certain things.
Yeah.
You can't be an expert on everything. And if you just focus, if I had a buyer right now and they were looking in different Cane Bay areas or something, I would probably pass them to someone that ask for a referral for someone that knew more information about that area.
Lisa, why don't you raise your hand that you can handle that, right? Lisa King?
I think you can't be an expert in everything, but if you know the inventory in, 5 areas well, you're doing great. Any other questions on that? Andrea, have you ever signed into Remine?
Yes, I have.
Oh, yeah,
I like it. I have not bought into it yet.
So I would love to sit down and with everyone just in front of my screen, the pro version. So let's say I could go to Seaside Farms and I can run the different layers of the data. So you could do absentee owners owned before, 2005 and certain amount of equity out of state, and just run the layers. I mean, you've now drilled down so far.
Right.
Into what it is. I think you weren't on before this, but let's say Sneak Farm, or not just Sneak Farm, this would work for areas like Ashboro East, like older, lots of areas of West Ashley. You could run the same searches, homes over 2,800 square feet, 2-story, owned it since before 1995.
Right.
Because that person, that wasn't their first home. They weren't buying that at age 21.
Right.
Mary Beth, does all the things that you do, you pay for it, right?
I have the pro version, and it's in one transaction it's paid for itself. That's what I mean. You have to decide if it's something that you actually would do or not do. Some people will think they're going to do it and not want to go that far.
Do they give you like a month for free or anything like that?
So you can call them, and I know that they have in the past. A bunch of my mentees have used it in the beginning, and they would call and say, look, I would like to try this, but I don't want to pay. I can't pay the $150 a month pro version fee. and they got some introductory discount rate for a month. It was like for 3 months, but it wasn't auto renewing. So they could try it for a month, see if they would use it, and go from there. Not everyone enjoys prospecting or can see, like, because it is a continuous thing.
Prospecting is a must in real estate. Now, may not enjoy the research, but prospecting.
I know, but I think that people have a hard time wanting to continue. It's tedious and
true.
Can get boring, and when they don't see a payoff right away, will quit.
That's my favorite thing to do. I mean, I
know. We used
tax
to
records. I work with tax records still, and that's just because I
this is
I
basically
learned that
the
way.
tax records on steroids.
Right, and so it's probably something that I should do, and that I get a lot out of.
So,
because,
you can, let's say, run the search, and mine gives me the contact information.
Yeah.
For the people, and if it's something like that 2,800 square feet, Snee Farm, like owned it a long time thing, I am writing them a handwritten note. I'm not a caller. I don't enjoy that. I'm writing a handwritten note. But if it's something like it's an absentee owner out of state, I will Google, and they have a weird name, I will Google them and I will email them at work.
Mm-hmm.
What, Tracy, what are you laughing about?
No, I was just envisioning you emailing me while I'm at work, asking me, about my property and my house. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this woman is stalking me,
Yeah,
so
and everyone has like a different, everyone has a different, I've never had someone respond, you're a stalker. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I write letters all the time.
All the time. You know what?
Week.
If it is somebody like, let's say there was this one over in Bayview Acres. It was a guy who lived in California, never lived in the property. He was a businessman out in California. Those properties have gone up significantly. It's a rotting old home he's got. He's not renting it out. And so I sent him an email at work. Oh, he wrote right back within 30 minutes. No one is, and I do make a little joke about it in the email. I say, sure, you're going to find this a little weird, but I am a researcher by nature. And like one woman was a professor at LSU that I emailed about her parents' home, and she wrote right back too and said, no, not at all. I appreciate it. And if they don't, you can't be worried that you're going to offend that. I don't say anything offensive in the email, but most of them are impressed with the step that you've taken to get there.
I do have a question about your pro version. You mentioned it was $150 a month. Do you see that a big difference for that $150 from what you could
that's what I was saying like at the beginning. I am not sure what the other versions entail.
I remember from your last presentation that you did on Remine that I believe.
So mine definitely has like distressed properties. It gives me like anything that's in foreclosure, anything like that. I don't know if the other versions give you the sell score situation. I'm not sure about that.
What about contact information?
Oh, yes, correct. The contact information is only with the pro.
So would it benefit anyone from getting or just using the basic version of it?
I think that like the key for me would be to be able to, hold on a second, I've got to text a client. So the key would be able to say if you could do a certain neighborhood by doing it by neighborhoods. I would want to know that that was available in the free version, that you could say Hamlin Plantation and run the filters that way, or if it's just the broad map.
Yeah, y'all, I think it's key for everybody to get involved with what's available free. And as you learn that, it will,
Yeah.
you'll
So do
it'll
the
grow to
free
know what it
webinar.
can be done.
Like,
Yeah.
did you do the webinar with them?
I did. I haven't completed it. No, I've done it. I started it and had to stop it.
Yeah, so they will sign on with you one-on-one for free for 15 minutes and talk, walk you through what is available, what's in each version, and how to use it.
Okay. Nice.
I think it's worthwhile, and just thinking through if you were a person that would even use this. There are ways to use it that I haven't even tapped into. Like, I watched a video on a guy who pulled all the absentee owners in this area, investment properties and neighborhood, and he pulled their contact information into a CSV, puts it into Facebook Ad Manager with targeted ads to their Facebook about selling their investment property.
Has anybody on here used the free version? Anybody?
I have.
Yep.
I have.
I liked it. It's similar to the tax records, though, as far as the free version.
And so it's all changed. How their system has changed. I was an early adopter in this program, so it has changed how that program works and what they offer in it from the beginning. So I can't say what it is now in the free version.
I would love to do the trial. I'm glad to know that some of your people have done that.
Yeah, you just and just talk them down and say, look, I would like to check it out.
Yeah.
It's worth it. And so let's say you can also type in someone's name, or you could be on a property that somebody owns and click on their contact information, and it shows you the other properties that that person is associated with.
Wow.
So that was interesting.
I just had this thought. I wonder how it would work if, like Tracy and Vicky, you could buy one version, two people, y'all are a team, but two individuals could buy and share one. I wonder, how would that work?
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Through the MLS, so I don't know that they'd have to sign on to your MLS account, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know. And also this is another interesting thing that I like about it. So I want to say that it's in every version, but I'm not sure. It tracks your past clients, and it is all linked when you first sign into it. Your past clients are tracked in there, and when things happen with them, let's say they've refinanced or they have changed the deed or their sell score has changed, it will alert you. And I think it gives you great talking points when reaching out to them. What do y'all think?
Do you have to set those requests, those filters to, like, on my properties? Does it automatically update me on all of those properties that I had?
I didn't set anything for it.
So it has. It has sent me a couple on my last one of it wasn't my last one. About 3 or 4 transactions. I just got that notification. That's why I asked if it was real time or how accurate that data was.
It was pretty accurate. I'd sold 2 properties to like these brother and sister. This was, a while back, and they both refinanced around the same time. And I got a notification that they'd refinanced. And then I had another property, and that was a little crazy, and it just sent me notifications about that too. I mean, sometimes you get the notification and you're like, oh, I can't believe like they listed with someone else. But what do you can't win them all.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Tracking.
Nice, because I've been inspired to look at it again.
Yeah, it really is.
Today.
Yeah, and in all honesty, like I was telling Andrew end of last week, I have been slack about prospecting in the last month, but I've gotten back to it in the last week or so and just started writing out more of the notes because we have no inventory. The inventory situation is so low. And I think there are a lot of people out there right now that don't understand how many people are looking. They think that no one's out looking, so why would they list their home right now? Whereas, when the inventory dropped below 5,000 in December, I was shocked. It had never been below 5,000 in this close to 6 years I've been doing this. So now we're at 4170.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So listings I see this as a fantastic listing tool. And as you say,
It
listings
really is thinking through what people are buying right now. Any questions on that? So I think each one of you could use it. Like we've kind of gone through my whole presentation on how to use it and stuff like that. But I was leaving some time if anyone wanted to talk through other neighborhoods or ideas of how to use it in areas. No?
I have a woman who wants to find something in Folly. I'm just wondering how like people with vacation rentals have been impacted by the quarantine and by people not traveling as much, and if maybe there's
oh my god, well that also like it's you have to constantly be evaluating every aspect, right? Like if you had talked to me 6 months ago, I'm like, oh, this aging population, they're going to sell. Well, now I don't feel that way anymore. And the same, if you had talked to me at the beginning of quarantine, I would have said, oh, the people with the vacation rentals, they're going to, a lot of them are over leveraged, and losing that income is going to impact them and they're going to have to sell. Well, now I don't feel that way at all.
really.
I think, Andrea, what can you say to the vacation rental market?
Slammed.
Crazy. It's exploding.
Slammed. I mean,
I need a place right now for some people. There's not enough.
And the prices are outrageous.
Yeah, it's a great time to own a vacation rental.
And in March, it was the absolute worst time in my life.
Yeah, so it's always have to evaluate it and constantly see how it's changing.
Absolute free fall in March.
Yeah, free fall. I think Bruce at that point was like going to write to every vacation rental owner on Folly. I'm like, now I don't feel that way. Those people are loving it.
Mm.
Yeah. So
can you hear me, Mary Beth?
Yeah.
Okay. Question I had is, it's kind of like regarding buyers that I've actually sold and helped them buy new properties through the construction industries. One's a single person, the other one's a couple. They're both brand new. They both have bought within the last 6 months. If I put this into Remine, will it automatically start tracking if they're looking to move up? You don't even have to,
like, because if the transaction has gone through the MLS, like if it has been in their input and you are their buyer's agent in the MLS, like you will be automatically their transaction and that property will be tracked.
Okay, yeah, one of them's through the MLS, the other one's new home construction through Lennar. What happens with new home construction?
I think you'd have to go back and track them.
Okay, so that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
if I list them, I could put them in, and then hopefully that would start getting tracked as well. That's what I'm trying to figure out. All right, thanks.
Yeah, Yeah,
Mhm.
and I've also used it. There's an app with it too, and so I could be driving down the street and see a home that is vacant, and I can put it in and pull up the app and put in the address and get more information on it.
Mhm.
Because some of those vacant properties, if you put them in the, into the MLS app to pull them up, there's no pictures, there's no nothing. This just gives you a broader understanding.
I think this is a great time to get listings because there's so few on the market, so the seller should be able to get better prices.
Yeah, I think though it is a really important understanding of some of these people won't be moving. I think Gary from Andrea's office had this person that was supposed to be listing, and now they won't be moving because of fear of the pandemic, because of their age. So that's an important, thing to think about.
They're not moving to an elder care place, right?
They were going to be moving with their daughter, but their daughter lives in a place that has been like one of the hardest hit areas. So they will not be going there.
I've also thought about people who maybe were considering leaving their homes to go to.
Absolutely. That is
Now it's a prison.
That's a prison. So they are not going to
They might downsize.
No, yeah, but the problem with that is, like, I think about this all the time because it's a major problem in my neighborhood. Let's say someone has this home that has 2,800 square feet, not been updated at all, original finishes, and they're thinking, they'll sell for $650, $700. They're thinking, why am I going to do that if I'm going to sell? They want to stay within that same vicinity. And why am I going to sell that and then downsize to something where I'm not even saving that much money?
Yeah.
Those are still selling for $550. Why am I doing that?
Mm-hmm.
So they're not. And it also, like, at that point, a lot of them, it becomes dangerous. But it's a whole nother story. But thinking through that steps, and I don't prospect to the ranch home in that scenario.
You don't prospect to what?
The ranch homes.
Oh, nobody's leaving a ranch home.
No, I mean, you could stay in a ranch forever. Well, I hope everyone got something out of this, even if you've come before. If you had questions, you wanted to text me later, we can do that too.
Thanks. A lot of great information.
Thank you.